Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And our exploration of William Friedkin continues with 1977's Sorcerer, which is based on The Wages of Fear by Henri-Georges Clouzot, or at least based on the same novel that was based on. But it definitely owes a debt to the Clouzot film. It's dedicated to Clouzot at the end, for instance. It's about these four guys who don't know each other at the start. You're introduced to them separately, and they all, for one reason or another, escape their lives to South America. And in South America, they kind of have nothing and they want to leave. And a job comes up from an American oil company that requires them to drive unstable, badly stored nitroglycerin 200 miles across mountains, dirt tracks. And they don't like each other, but they have to get on with it. They could die at any moment. Fate could kill them. Nature's against them. You're the one who was really interested in seeing this. You hadn't seen it before. So what did you make of it?
It's a weird film because I thought it was very suspenseful. The suspense really worked on me. I loved the look of it. Yeah, you can see how Friedkin is such an incredibly skilled director. Yeah, the way the camera moves and flows, the compositions, the way the shots are set up, right? It's almost like you can't fault it. And yet... The editing is beautiful. And actually, I noticed in the credits, which I hadn't realized, that the editor is one of the co-producers of the film. So that's how important, the contribution of the editors was. And yet I don't like it. Yeah, I kind of, so I have seen the original Wages of Fear. And I found it more suspenseful, more philosophical. Yeah, it is about, a character not determining fate, the world being chance. In this film, I didn't like the prologues. Yeah, I mean, I like them, or I like some of them, but it's almost telling you that because of those events that they did early in the film, life is now punishing them, yeah, in a way that there's no way out. So therefore, character in this film does become fate. You do something bad, you'll get punished. Yeah, you'll end up in this horrible town. Yeah, which actually I also didn't like that. I thought it was like disgraceful. I didn't like the way the Latin American town and culture and so on was depicted. I was going to say that Friedkin finds no beauty or love or anything in that place. Now, you can have a place that's run down and very poor and still find that, beauty, love, family, whatever, all Friedkin finds is how beautiful, a rooster's red crown is, right? Like, yeah. So there are things that in a way draw me to him. I mean, I like that he's drawn to darkness, I think we all carry darkness as a part of life. We all carry it within us. I like to see explorations of it. But it also seems to me that Friedkin can't see beyond the darkness. Yeah, and I don't like that.
Yes, there's little joy in these characters' lives.
There's little joy, there's little love, there's little beauty.
To the extent that we get to know them. The thing about the prologue section that introduces the four characters that struck me was it really worked for me in the moment. I like the style of those things. You've got a Palestinian character who does a bombing in Jerusalem and has to escape. You've got the French sort of business owner who's under investigation for 15 million francs of corruption, so he has to escape. Roy Scheider is a mob guy in New Jersey, and kind of heist goes wrong. He has to escape, and someone else. I can't remember the fourth one. But they all have to escape, and they end up in South America. Who's the fourth
Let me tell you, because the fourth one is this hired killer in Mexico. Right. And actually, one of the fascinating things about him is that he is Paco Raval. And Paco Raval is arguably, the biggest male star of Francoist Spanish cinema. He was also one of Buñuel's favorite actors. He was the star of Viridiana and Belle de Jour.
Yes, Belle de Jour. Well, I was reading that Friedkin wanted him for the Fernando Rey role.
That's right.
In the previous film, the French Connection.
That's what I've read. Yes, but instead ended up with Fernando Rey. So obviously, they were all the casting people were so racially prejudiced they couldn't tell one spick from another. There's one way.
I understand that I think the story goes that he had seen him in a Buñuel film, seen him in Belle de Jour, and all he could remember was that he was Spanish and sent someone off to identify him, and they came back with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
But he got him for this.
Anyway, Fernando Rey is very good in it, and I absolutely love Paco Raval in this, actually.
And his character here, as you say, this sort of assassin for hire, he's not someone who's escaping to South America. He's someone who, when you meet him, he's passing through South America.
Yes.
But for whatever reason, he's still there, and he decides to kill this German former Nazi who's hiding out there. And because this German is one of the 4 guys selected to transport this nitroglycerin, Nilo kills him and takes his place.
That's one of the faults of the film, is that you're never clear on what Nilo is doing.
Yes, I kind of agree. Well, this is kind of what I'm getting to, because I think the thing about those prologues for me is, in the moment, they really work. So the style of them and the way they set up a very simple thing about who this character is and why he's there works. And then you don't learn really anything else about these characters for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
Not through their dialogue with each other, not through Roy Scheider's character, you get through his kind of expressions and his kind of weariness, a kind of despondency, and you start to feel his character, I guess, but you don't learn anything more about him. And by the end of the film, you're going, I don't know why I was so invested in these people, but in the moment, those setups, at least for the main 3 characters, not so much the assassin, they did kind of see me through the rest of the film. It was only after the film that I thought, oh wait, I didn't learn anything about these guys.
Well, for me, it is, because I was thinking, because there's all those things that I really value in film that I began this with, right? Like, the compositions, the lighting, the look, the way that, like, every camera move seems purposeful, and then you're thinking, but really, to what end? Because I saw the film in 2 parts. I saw it late at night, the first hour, and then I just, it didn't hold my interest enough to make me stay up to finish it off. And then I backtracked a little bit, and then I saw the rest this morning, and I was asking myself, like, I'm not moved by anything. The only feeling that I felt watching it was suspense. The suspense I credit, right? But out of a whole range of emotion that a person can feel while watching a film, that it only elicits suspense, because actually I wouldn't even say thought, right? So I am I'm also desperately trying to make meaning from it, right? To say, well, why are we seeing this and why are we seeing that? And actually kind of, I can't come up with anything other than to express a very bleak view of life, that in some ways, and completely unlike the Salaire de la Peau, is burdened by a sense of sin, of having done something wrong. Like, and actually I really, as I said, I despised the way that, this fake Latin American country is depicted. Dictators, poverty, grimness, a prison. Like, there's nothing good. You'd say, well, at least the bananas are excellent or something. No, nothing is good about this place, right? Which I think is false, and a lack of intellectual curiosity and empathy, a lack of empathy. So
there is some beautiful landscape photography, I thought, which maybe call comfort when, kind of the rest of the depiction is kind of so grimy.
Yes.
But I thought at points, especially helicopter shots of the kind of the dense, lush forests, are really showing the place off.
They are.
I thought.
But isn't it terrible that somebody should care more about landscape than people?
I think that may be true. Yeah. I mean, it has a sense of that. Remember, we saw the last Rambo film, Last Blood, I think it was called, and I was saying that they go down into Mexico, and Mexico is hell, and then they come back into the USA, and the USA is heaven.
Yes.
It's this lovely ranch and the rest, and this has a sense of that. Like you send these people there into hell.
Into hell, yes.
But you're associating hell with this foreign culture, South America.
And it's not only that. That whole episode with the indigenous man and his family. Like, what the fuck was all that about? Right?
Yeah.
And it feels...
And actually, that's a point where I thought something would happen, because I think it's a problem that the film's title is Sorcerer. Because knowing nothing about this film going in, this had the sense to me of it's going to be something supernatural going on, following The Exorcist, and also the very start of the film, like one of the opening images is a picture of that stone sort of South American, like Mayan figure. And so you think, oh, this is going to figure into the film somewhere, and then for an hour it doesn't, and then you see it again, they drive past it, and then again it doesn't. But so I'm thinking, like, when that guy shows up, and he's this kind of native, I guess, and he's kind of dancing around the truck and teasing them, you're thinking, oh, so it starts here. And then it doesn't. So it really just becomes nothing. And you go, what the hell, as you say, what the hell was that all about?
I mean, and actually, because they run him over, don't they?
I think they drive, they don't stop driving, but I think the guy is like adept and he doesn't actually get run over, I think.
Well, again, isn't that terrible? Because I think he did, right? So I think, if we're not even sure about it,
I've not been watching properly. That
is also a fault with the film. I mean, I think so. The landscape is beautiful. It's beautifully filmed. Some of the shots are amazing. The ones at the end with that kind of lunar landscape, with those almost mythological cliffs or the statue. Yeah, they look like sculpture.
And there's like a purple sky above them.
I mean, they look fantastic, right? So I can understand why the film is a failure. I think it gives the audience very little, both in terms of sensation, there's not a laugh in it, that's for sure. And also, if you try to think of the themes or of meaning, I don't think it's very serious or sophisticated in relation to any of that either. So this is becoming maybe a hobby horse with me about Friedkin, or actually maybe really a problem with Friedkin, because this seems to be a pattern now.
I have a slightly different sense of why it was a failure. And it definitely was a failure. It flopped at the box office, and it's only kind of in recent years, I think it's had a kind of critical reappraisal. So I think it kind of failed critically and financially. One of the reasons is that it came out a month after Star Wars.
Yes. And
Star Wars took over the world, I think one reason is the title, and I do think people would have been expecting something different something different to what they got.
I think that is true. I'm sure those are factors, but the film was released at a different time. So, the fact that Star Wars came out like at the same time, it is not a given that anything released next to it would have been completely obliterated. No. Star Wars success, it's not necessarily the failure of Sorcerer. Right, I think the film gives an audience very little. I mean, as I said, the only thing that I felt whilst watching it was suspense, right? So you go to a movie.
Yeah, but that's not to be sniffed at, because I think that's its greatest feature, I'm
not sniffing at it. It's definitely its greatest feature. I agree with you, but I think it's not enough.
No, I agree it's not enough, and I leave the film going, what about this will I want to watch again? And what I will want to watch again is the bit with the bridge. there's nothing negative I can say about the bit where they're crossing the rope bridge. I think it's extraordinary, and the fact that this is really happening because this is in the age before CGI, and you can tell it's not a model. They have gone to a river and built a rope bridge and driven a truck across it in those conditions, or they fake those conditions to some extent, but like that is really happening, and you feel the weight of that thing and the peril, and are they going to make it, and is it going to break, and it's so big, and all the rest of it. I thought that was brilliant. I thought it was a fantastic scene, and that will stay with me. And I was thinking just that imagine seeing it on a cinema screen, if only we'd been able to. That would have been extraordinary.
To be fair, there are things that will stay with me. Yeah, like I do think that Friedkin is an extraordinarily skilled director. I don't want to minimize that. So there are actually many things that will stay with me. The scene in the bridge is one of them. The way the whole film looks, really. I loved bits of the soundtrack, yeah, so kind of, not necessarily the famous Tangerine Dream thing, but I love the bits of jazz that they use, the Charlie Parker and the bits of So What and so on. I thought that was lovely. I love Paco Raval's performance, actually. I just... it gives me pleasure, because he's doing such theatrical things. Just the way that he holds his hat in one scene, is kind of gives the film an energy and a jolt. So, there are many things that I value about it. But I would like someone to explain to me why they see it as a modern classic, because I certainly kind of think it's nowhere near that. Being technically proficient at producing kind of these things on the huge budget that he had, because I read from Wikipedia that, the film began with a 2.5 million budget and then inflated to I don't know how much. Yeah, this is
20 odd.
Yeah, this is so, this is a big budget film for its time, right? I think Star Wars cost $6 million, if I remember correctly. This is a $20 million film, right? So, kind of a lot of those things that we're marveling at, the technical aspects of it, those are things you can buy.
Yeah, we still got to do them. 11 million is the budget I've got here for Star Wars.
Okay, so this is double the budget of the original Star Wars, and the original.
But I think the thing is, Sorcerer is trying something. It has this feeling of that kind of New Hollywood sort of unrestrained authorial ego on screen. Like, this is my story and this is what I'm trying. It has a kind of Apocalypse Now sort of sense of madness and scale, and they can't stop us. We're going to go into the jungle and make this, and which I really enjoy. And I think,
but the film itself has none of the madness that Apocalypse Now the film has.
Oh, that's for sure. And it has that sort of it has that hallucination sequence towards the end, but that's as far as the madness goes. And I don't think it's I'm not sure it's entirely going for that, but I love that sense of place and intent. Even if it kind of feels like it feels like it's aiming at something thematically deeper than it's capable of sort of achieving, because it feels like it heads back into set pieces and it heads back into thrills when it could be developing character and developing theme, which I think it does very little. But I wasn't bored for a second. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed following it, actually. When it's probably 25 minutes in or so when you move into South America and you find your characters there, and they don't know each other, but they notice each other because they're all out of place and they can tell, and things gradually develop. So the Roy Scheider character, the police are onto him because they've all got fake identities and they've worked his out, and they start garnishing his wages and all this. You've got the Palestinian character and the ex-Nazi who develop a slight friendship between them. I like the way it was. I like the pacing of it, and I like the staging of it, and I like the fact that, like I say, it's an hour of the film. It's half of the film before they even get into the trucks and make this deal, saying we're going to transport this nitroglycerin, and the time really flew by for me, And then I like the sequences. I like the sequence of them getting the trucks together and doing them up and fixing them and so on. It's just a montage of of engineering, but I like that. I think it's very skillful filmmaking, as you said. I like the fact how little dialogue there is in it, actually. So much of the film is visually told, visually narrated, and it's just kind of one shot following another and action progressing gradually. You know, I wasn't bored for a single second. I was constantly interested in where things would go, and I couldn't quite get. I'd never seen Wages of Fear. I'd never read the novel. You know, I didn't even know what it was. I mean, I know of Wages of Fear, but never seen it or known the story. So it was all completely new and unpredictable to me. The only thing I really, really, really didn't like, actually, which spoke to a kind of cheapness, was the very ending, where Roy Scheider's he's the only surviving member of the group, and he's going to get paid all 4 shares, and he gets his citizenship that he's won, his legal citizenship, so he doesn't get bothered. And it looks like he's kind of finally sort of made some way out for himself. And then the people who were searching for him, with his old friend who sent him to South America, show up outside, and you just hear them go inside and shoot him, and film credits.
Yes.
And you go, oh man, why does it have to? Why did that have to happen?
Yes.
You know, there's no effect to it. It just makes me feel a bit despondent and bereft.
And if that was the ending they wanted to give, they could have ended it earlier, where Roy Scheider ends up by himself in that lunar landscape, you know, on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. If they would have just exploded the truck there, you know, and him in it, you know, that would have been like the same effect of the ending that they actually did 10 minutes later. So, to me,
except without the idea that he almost got away. Except without the idea he almost made it.
You could have
that's what they give him.
Well, you could have conveyed that idea, you know, 10 minutes earlier. I think there's something very obvious also about Friedkin's structures in these films. Yeah, like, I mean, I know it's in the novel and I know it's in the previous film, but you know that with 2 trucks going forward, one of them is not going to make it, right? So it's just a question of like, kind of when is it going to happen, right? So I didn't, and again, it's a problem that I see in other of his films, that, you know, he's often he credits himself as co-screenwriter, and I'm not sure he necessarily improves very important things in the film, like structures, So, so a mixed bag, really. I'm very glad I saw it, and I would recommend that other people see it. But the more I'm seeing of Friedkin's work, the more these claims, you know, that he is one of the unsung great directors of the 70s, right? And, you know, that it's time to reevaluate him along the same lines of the very greatest of that period. To me, those, you know, become weaker and weaker claims the more I see so far of his work.
Yeah, like his abilities as a craftsman seem to be unquestionable, really. Yes. And that's why things like the car chase in The French Connection will continue to be kind of classic, because that's what they're about. But it does feel in this film as if, and I think it feels in The French Connection as well, as if he doesn't care enough about kind of thematic or character depth, or gets distracted from it by you know, making thrills and chases and suspense and so on, which he's very good at. But as you said with French Connection, he came out feeling, okay, what's it about? I kind of had that feeling here. Yes. You know, anything you can say it's about is fairly light, really. And actually what it's about for me is the scene on the bridge. It's about the oil fire shooting up into the air, which I thought looked incredible too. You know, and was shot amazingly. That's what it's about. And it leaves you with those images and a feeling of bereftness at the end. Yeah.
I want to say something about Roy Scheider as well, which will sound mean, you know, because I've always liked him without being, you know, completely like crazy about him. But watching him in this film, I thought he was also part of the reason why the film didn't work, right? You know, I don't know what his age was, but he's someone who I think came to fame relatively late. Yeah, that.
He was born in 32, so he would have been 45 or so here.
There you go. Right. So, and this is like one of his early leading roles. Yeah. He was playing a supporting part in The French Connection. And you can see how much work he's had done on his face. Yeah. There's something really plasticky and stretched out about his face in this film. Right. So it's both angular, but also, I think, inexpressive, actually. Yeah.
That's not something I noticed.
Right, okay, well.
But then I'm not as shallow as you.
You're talking about acting. How a face moves is not being shallow, right? It's kind of... or what a face expresses is not being shallow. It's, So for me, kind of Scheider is a problem with this film, yeah? That kind of you're not really led into what's in his... He doesn't let you into what's in his mind as an actor, really, aside from the way that the character is drawn. And I think it's very different, for example, than, the Paco Rabanne character, who's also not given a character to play, actually. And there's not much he can do with it. But, being the wily actor that he is, at least he gives you pleasure in it, right? Like, just glances, looks, the way he wears his hat. Yeah, he's giving a performance to an audience, right? So, kind of, he's not letting you inside his emotions because, the character is not drawn with any, right? But at least he's making something of that part. I think with Scheider, I feel neither one nor the other.
I feel like Scheider has that... what was it that... Paul Schrader.
Yes.
Paul Schrader, I think, had... Did he have an argument with Spielberg about some film they were working on? And Schrader wanted a kind of action hero type. And Spielberg wanted a kind of everyman type. Who you could imagine that you were and looked like you went to McDonald's, and they had this kind of thing. They had this huge argument about that. It's like Spielberg's going, that's exactly what I want. Roy Scheider kind of has that here for me, and I think it makes him likable. Actually, I mean, the one thing that occurred to me is that I believed all the characters, even the assassin, who's a real kind of, he's a nothing character, and he's a real film trope. But I still kind of believe vaguely who he is and what he likes. He talks about, at the end when he's dying, he talks about the screwing whores in wherever the place was. I can't remember the name of the town. And you go like, yeah, I believe that of him. Sorry?
Managua, I think.
Managua. And you go like, yeah, I believe that of him. I believe this guy. I believe the Palestinian and kind of why things would go so wrong that he would end up there. I believe Roy Scheider and why things would go so wrong that he would end up. In fact, the thing I least believe about Roy Scheider is that he was ever a gangster, I suppose. That's the least believable thing about him.
Yeah.
But I liked that, I liked that I didn't actually question these guys, really.
I think there's a big blank in that role and a lack of warmth. Yeah. I mean, imagine, my middle-aged brain is fading now, but who was in that? Bruce Willis. Imagine Bruce Willis in that part. Yeah? It would be full of warmth and jokes and, like, kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you know who the role was written for?
No, who?
Steve McQueen.
Well, Steve McQueen would have been fantastic in that, and he would have brought all those qualities, and he would have been more believable as a gangster and all of that. I mean, there is something very static about Scheider. I mean, I think he's a very good actor, don't get me wrong. But actually, I do think that there is something inexpressive about his face in this film. And also, well, I suppose, he doesn't have the kind of movie star qualities that then just, automatically draw you in, like a Cagney or a Robinson or,
or a McQueen. I mean, look, you imagine like the value of a close-up of McQueen is so much greater, just in terms of feeling and beauty and interest, than a close-up of Roy Scheider. As interesting an actor as he can be, it's just not the same,
No, exactly.
It has that star power, star quality, whatever you want to call it. It's a big difference.
Yeah, and that's something that's at the whole of this film. You know, and that actually is usually a problem with Friedkin as well. I mean, I think of all the films that I've now seen, Boys in the Band, Cruising, To Live and Die in L.A., Jade, and this film, and The Exorcist, the only film star that he, in these films is Al Pacino, right? So, you know, in The Exorcist you have Ellen Burstyn, but that was kind of, and she did become a star in the 70s, but that was kind of before that. And of course you have Max von Sydow, right, who of course was a star in Bergman films. But you know what I mean? Like he's not like...
In Killer Joe, there's Matthew McConaughey, which we'll get on to when we see that.
Yes.
And that is and that's not just a film star, it's a starring role in that film as well. He commands the film.
Sure. But kind of, that seems to be
I do
more
get your point.
An exception than the rule, right? So, which I think is also an interesting thing. Obviously, the star of Friedkin films is meant to be Friedkin himself, right? Which goes on.
Yeah, I found an interesting interview. It was like that. I think it was only a few years ago. The film was restored in, I think, 2014, and it was shown at some place. And there's a transcript of the Q&A afterwards with him, and he's talking about how the studio was uncomfortable with the fact there are so many foreign actors in the film. Like, how are people going to go and see this when they don't recognise the people's names? And he had this attitude of like, it doesn't matter, I'm Friedkin. And, you know, he said, I was very arrogant back then. I think that's probably not changed these days, but still he said, I was very arrogant back then, and I thought that the fact that I made the film would be what got people in. You know, and so he definitely sort of, there's well, like I say, there's authorial ego to him, and it's not just in terms of sort of a point of view of the film, it's also about the guy behind it. You know.
All right, so shall we wrap it up here? Is there any last thing you want to say?
I really liked it, I've got to say, despite the fact I ended up feeling a bit empty and broken. There's so much that I liked, and I will revisit scenes. I will revisit those images of the fire, and I'll revisit that whole sequence of the bridge. And I'll revisit probably the hallucination sequence as well, that leads into that kind of ending at the in that sort of weird white graveyard seeming place. Kind of very peculiar, but you know, so there are lots of things that I liked, but you do end up going, there's an even greater film hidden behind spectacle, I suppose.
Yes, and it was made by Clouzot.
Maybe it was, I suppose I have to watch that one.
So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. And our website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.